All right, round two. All right, just to reintroduce myself, guys, my name is Fahim. I am an epidemiologist by day, and I am a gamer by night. So for today, I'm going to be talking about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Basically, it's about the game of World of Warcraft. I've pretty much been playing this game for about, 14 years? I started off in Burning Crusade, which is one of the expansions I'll talk about. Oh, I should probably mention the topic of this particular discussion. I'm going to be ranking each World of Warcraft expansion. Um, but just a quick introduction about myself. I started playing in Burning Crusade, or BC, and I've pretty much played this game with a few breaks here and there, all the way up to Shadowlands, the current expansion. Um, so again, this ranking is gonna be basically based off of my own personal experiences playing the game. Uh, what I've heard from some of my close friends and other people that I've played with over the years, uh, and pretty much just my musings, my thoughts on what Blizzard was trying to do, their direction, um, and kind of like how things have shifted, throughout the entirety of the expansions, because there are quite a few things that people probably need to take into account when you know thinking about these expansions. A specific expansion that you may think was pretty bad might actually be an expansion that wasn't bad at all. Hold on one second. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and yeah, hopefully everything that I say in this particular stream will you know we'll start some discussion about how these expansions have been, and hopefully maybe Blizzard will eventually get their ish together when it comes to Shadowlands, because right now I won't grade Shadowlands because it's still in the process of we're still in the expansion, but as of right now it's kind of looking a bit iffy. But yeah, Shadowlands I won't talk about. That's the one expansion I won't talk about for this specific video. I'm pretty much only gonna be talking about from BC up through Battle for Azeroth, or BFA. I won't talk about vanilla because me personally, I haven't played vanilla, so I don't think I'm in any position to talk about it. So I don't think it'd be a good idea for me to talk about an expansion that I never played. I don't have that personal experience, so it's not something I could adequately rank. Also, we are talking about expansions specifically, so vanilla is the original iteration of the game. So that's also another reason why I'm not going to be talking about vanilla. But I will talk about all the others. So with that being said, I am definitely going to go ahead and get started with the first one, BC. So with Burning Crusade, of course, it's my first introduction into WoW. So for me, I it has a special place in my heart, and I will rank it as an S. And I'll explain why. With BC, there was really a great sense of community. There was the sense that if I needed help with something, I can ask the general community, and more or less for the most part, they would help me. You'd have your occasional trolls every now and then, but for the most part, they'd help. Also, I feel like with BC, they kind of set the template for how rating goes now these days. With actual mechanics. A lot of my friends talk. They talk about how hard vanilla was, and how difficult it was, but they also mentioned that, like, yeah, it wasn't mechanically hard. It was just from a logistics standpoint, from a preparation standpoint, it was difficult to get 40 man raids together, which with BC, when they came out with 10 man Kara, and with the rest of the raids being 25 man, it was such a nice change, because you didn't need to have as much people to do rating, to do the rating. But I will definitely say that particular decision by Blizzard did set the template for future expansions, and you know we're all the better for it. Me personally, I started off playing as a lock. That was my first ever character. And just in BC, there wasn't really a sense of, oh, you gotta min max, you gotta pick a specific class, you gotta, like how we have flavor of the month classes with, you know, modern day expansions like BFA and Shadowlands. With BC, there was really none of that. You could bring whatever class you wanted, and you were viable in raid. The dungeons, of course, are pretty hard, yeah, especially the heroic ones. I did a few of them. Fortunately, I didn't have to do it for the attunements and stuff, which BC was known for, having crazy attunement quest to eventually raid. But I just did it, for the sheer fun of it, and yeah, they were pretty fun. They were very very challenging, at least for me, because again, this is my first foray into you know into doing any type of hard content, hard end game content. One of my first memories of BC was also doing 10-man Kara, which was such a fun raid. I loved Kara so much. It's probably, if I had to rank my favorite raids, yeah, it was definitely Kara was definitely the one for me. It was probably up there top five. And then I also remember doing Zolaman with my first guild. It was an amazing time, because like everyone in my guild back then was very helpful, and we all cared about the success of the raid. Like it wasn't we weren't worried about, oh, who topped the meters. I don't even think DPS meters were a thing at the time, but it was definitely a very very good time. I mean, and also it wasn't, from talking to my guild back then, they said that it wasn't even as much of a grind as vanilla was. And I played classic a little bit, and yeah, it was quite the grind just to even get up to like level 20, and it was too much of a grind for me. I was like, yeah, I can't, I can't do classic, and I can only imagine what vanilla was like when we didn't have the knowledge that we have now. Um, but yeah, and even NBC was like pretty much the only time that I actually wanted a PvP. I didn't do arenas, but I did do regular battlegrounds and stuff, and they were so much fun. Even though my internet connection was complete dog doo doo, like it was fun. Well, whatever I could play until I inevitably DC'd. It was a lot of fun. Um, Also, if you guys keep seeing me look to the side, I've just made notes to help me collect my thoughts, so that way I can talk about, like, each expansion, and providing you know a detailed uh, view of how the expansions were for me and how other people viewed them as well. Um, but yeah, like I said before, BC was pretty much the first time where you had like concept of modern day raiding. Like you had legitimate raid mechanics. It wasn't a snooze fest like vanilla slash classic was. It's actually funny because I remembered watching a clip by Zico, the famous PvPer, the ones that you see as the broadcaster for the PvP events that we have. He mentioned something about like how people were doing molten core. They were killing Ragnaros and greens, which is just insane because you don't really even think about something like that you could kill Ragnaros, a boss that was pretty iconic at the time, um, killing them in straight greens. But there they are. Uh, Again, the talent trees, that was pretty cool. That was a cool concept. And like, oh, cool, I leveled. I got this talent point. Now I can put it into whatever I want. And you had a choice. People didn't really care about having a specific DPS build. You could put your talent points in the talent tree however you wanted to. You had more variety. You had more freedom in how you wanted to play the game, at least when it came to the talent trees. Now, some of them were, some of the talents in those trees were kind of meh, but for the most part, a lot of talents in those trees, like especially for my warlock, playing as a demonology warlock, picking the talent like master demonologist or whatever, the demonic sacrifice, and having my shadow damage increase and whatnot by 15% when I sacrifice my succubus. That was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, like, and the zones that we went into, Hellfire. It was a Hellfire Citadel. God, I can't remember the name of it. Zanger Marsh. What else? Uh, God, I can't think of the names right now. I don't know why my memory's failing me. Oh, Nagrand. All these zones, they were all Nether Storm. All of them were very fleshed out, and yeah, it felt cool. It felt cool, questing in each one of them. It was a bit of a grind, which yeah, BC wasn't exactly known for being the most all friendly and being pretty grindy, but for the most part, it was worth doing. Um, and of course, BC was known for the attunement quests. Luckily, I never had to do them, because by the time I joined my first guild, a lot of the people in the guild they already had all the attunement quests done. So I could just join in their group and just do the dungeons without having to worry about doing all those attunement quests. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. The raiding, it was my first introduction into raiding, my first introduction into doing dungeons. Hell, I didn't even know that you could get better gear from instances until like 2 months into playing. My first guild leader, he's like, Fahim, why don't you have any blue gear? I'm like, wait, hold up, you can get blue gear? He's like, yeah. He's like, come, let me show you. And the first ever dungeon I did was Dead Mines, and it blew my mind when I got my first blue gear because obviously he gave me all the gear. I was like, yo, this is insane. Like you can actually get better quality. Like I've been getting like whites and greens all this time, but just getting blue gear was just it was mind blowing. And then I found out later on that you could even get a tier above that. You can even get like epic gear. And he was telling me about like all the different types of gear I could get. I was like, oh my god, I gotta get to level 70. I gotta do this end game content, and that really solidified my love for WoW, and started this journey that I'm still currently on, even 14, 15 years down the road. And yeah, like when I played BC, when I did PvP or PvE, classes didn't seem too unbalanced. Like you're not gonna have like what fire mages are today in BFA and in Shadowlands. You're not gonna have like classes that were like that. Now granted, of course, in any expansion you still have the meta specs. You still have that, of course. But in BC that wasn't really much of a thing. Like you like I said, you could bring any class and you could be viable. But I did feel like classes were pretty well, fleshed out. Of course, some classes like rogues and mages, still had advantages when it came to PvP. Excuse me. But on the whole, like you can do PvP and not be like, oh yeah, I don't want to do this anymore because I'm getting rammed by this damn rogue or mage or warrior or whatever. Like you can actually enjoy the content and not want to rip your hair out. So honestly, for me, BC was just way more good than bad, and it has a special place in my heart. Now, I do think from a gameplay perspective, it may not like in terms of like the content and everything it had to provide, it may not be the best, and I'll go into which expansion was the best in providing that, but I do think BC was up there. And again, like I said, it set the template for a lot of future content. And I definitely think that's something, that legacy is something that, people should remember BC by. And plus, there wasn't really anything there in terms of like, Dungeons Raids. It could be like, oh yeah, this place sucked. Like it was terrible. Like I felt like all of the raids that I did, even though I mainly only did two of them, I did do like Grohl and Bagtharden, but I don't really count those because they're like one boss raids. But yeah, it was a fun time. I definitely enjoyed BC quite a bit. Probably more so than I ever have when it came to WoW. And yeah, so yeah, for BC I would definitely rank that as an S tier. Okay, so for the next one we got what's it? The old famous also one last thing about BC that solidifies the whole S tier thing for me.
You are not prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. that sound clip is definitely one I'll never forget. But yes, the next one is Wrath, of course. And this is what for a lot of people when WoW was like at its peak, like it was the MMORPG. Like it was the game. I mean, even South Park had an episode dedicating an episode that talked about Warcraft, and of course they parodied. They made a parody out of it, but still, it was pretty funny. I enjoyed the episode, but at that time, that told you just how popular WoW really was, and Wrath of the Lich King was, you know, at its peak popularity wise. For me, I don't rank Wrath as highly as a lot of people do. But that's not to say that I rank it like really low either. For me, Wrath, it was pretty much when the game started to like cater more towards, casual players. And again, I'm not knocking casual. Don't let this be like, oh, I'm an elitist or I'm knocking casual players. No, nothing of the sort. I do think that they kind of veered away from the vanilla BC versions of doing raids and in terms of like making the raids difficult, making the dungeons difficult. Yeah, with Wrath, the dungeons were a complete joke. Like you could just run right through them. All of them were easy. I honestly can't even think of like a dungeon that was like really hard. Even the last three dungeons, Pit of Saran, uh, crap, I forget the last two dungeons. Shit. But you know the ones I'm talking about, the ones that were released in 3.3 or 3.2, 3.3. Those last three dungeons, I honestly don't think that they were that much more difficult than the dungeons that were released at the beginning of the expansion. Which kind of sucked because I enjoy doing difficult dungeons, and a lot of the people, a lot of my friends that know me on WoW know how much I love doing Mythic Pluses today. Uh, I thoroughly enjoy playing them. So yeah, the fact that the dungeons were a step down from what they were in BC kind of sucked in my opinion. But it is what it is. Um, but yeah, it wasn't even just the dungeons themselves. I did feel like Ulduar notwithstanding, which Ulduar I'll get into that later, but like even the Trial of the Crusader raid, even Eye of Eternity, the Obsidian Sanctum, all these early raids, and again, like I mentioned, Child of the Crusader, all of these raids were just, I don't know, they're just very, I wouldn't say super easy, but like they didn't present the type of challenges that like say Kara or Zulaman or Sunwell Plateau. I don't think they provided those types of challenges that the raids in BC did. But for my money, I will definitely say the raids, both Ulduar and Ice Crown Citadel, were amazing. And I think Blizzard actually figured out Ulduar and how they could, you know, make it harder for both, appease both sides, both the hardcore raiders and both the casual gamers. Of course, Ulduar, people remember it. Not only for the fights, but for the hard modes that you can initiate with quite a few of the fights, like with Memoron with his big red button, with the big robot dude XT reconstruct. I forget. I think it's XT reconstructor or whatever. Killing his heart, or whatever, and then what is it? Oh, Yaxaron not using any of the keepers, going in with none of the help. With none of the keepers helping you, which was amazingly hard. I never did it myself, but I did see videos of people trying to do it back then, and yeah, it was it looked like straight cancer. But no, those two raids, Ulduar and ICC, were amazing, just god tier, god tier amazing. Uh, Ulduar is one of my favorite raids as well. Again, a top five raid. ICC not quite a top five raid for me, but it's definitely like a top 10. I probably put it at like 6 or 7 personally for me. But it was definitely a very fun raid. And of course, the lore. I think this is really the only time, other than maybe Legion, where Blizzard had a coherent storyline, and you knew who the end villain was, and you knew like everything that you did up until facing the Lich King was in preparation to face him and to beat him. So and I feel like that's really the only time Blizzard ever came close to having a storyline, a good storyline. With subsequent expansions, I felt like Blizzard was trying to create a story, while they were releasing the patches for those expansions. Obviously, with some expansions like BFA, the story could be pretty disjointed and not flow at all. But with Wrath, that was never a problem. Literally everyone to a T probably enjoyed the lore more so than anything, and that's really the main thing that Wrath was known for. I mean, even for me, it was really more so about the lore than like the rating itself. Just seeing the conclusion of that story with Arthas and how he dealt with the Lich King. Uh, but yeah, the and of course Wrath probably had the best cinematic of all time. You guys all know the cinematic of Arthas walking out in Northrend with his sword and his father's voice in the background, and then him sticking his sword in the ice, and the whole all the soldiers, and the dragon coming up behind him, Sintragosa. Iconic. I love that cinematic, and to this day, it's probably my favorite World of Warcraft cinematic. And honestly, Blizzard just knocked it out the park with that one. Um, but yeah, and then also this is me, when DKs are first brought into the game, and yeah, I will admit I played DK as did damn near everyone else when the game first started. And I also remember trying to DPS as a blood DK. That was a thing. For those of you that played, that started playing after Lich King or after the Lich King, yes, you could once DPS as a blood DK, which was insane. The problem was, in order Blizzard tried to have every class or every spec, Blood, Frost, and Unholy, be both, it could either tank or DPS. So you pretty much had an insane toolkit. The DKs had an insane toolkit from the jump. Like you could pretty much lock down a person's movement with chains of ice. Your anti-magic shield like absorbed all the magic damage. Your anti-magic zone absorbed like 75% of the magic damage for the entire group. Like DKs were just busted, like insanely busted, and they were a lot of fun to play. It just, for me, I didn't stick with playing DK because I enjoyed my Warlock a lot, but it was definitely a class that I had a lot of fun playing when I did play it in Wrath. But yeah, they were probably one of the most broken classes I remember playing with or against. It's just like especially when it came to like DPS, you were not gonna out DPS DK with how good they were, with how broken they were. Uh, I'm trying to think what else. What else I remember with Wrath? Oh, yeah. Also, one of the main legacies with Wrath is that they brought in LFG, which I know for a lot of people is kind of controversial because that's really when that sense of community started dying down. You really had a lot of people being like, why do I need to talk to anyone when I can just like queue for a dungeon, get my stuff done, and leave without having to ever have to speak to anyone. But at the same time, it kind of killed that sense of that sense of community that you had in vanilla and BC, and that's kind of a letdown because that's probably one of the main reasons I did continue playing World of Warcraft, because of that sense of community. My first guild stayed together up until Wrath, where they pretty much just broke apart early on in the expansion. And it didn't really have anything to do with LFG. It's just, yeah, it was a different vibe during Wrath. It was just less sociable. Probably because the content was easier. You didn't really need to communicate as much. But it was definitely, it was definitely, a mixed bag with LFG. Like I do think it was needed because there were people from other servers, low population servers, that probably couldn't find the group that they needed to. They probably couldn't find a group that they could. Or they probably couldn't find a group of people that they could group with to do these dungeons. I know because my first server that I ever played on was Agwin, which was a very low population server, and for me it was pretty difficult to find people that I could do dungeons with. Um, so having LFG was definitely a godsend. I could definitely say because yeah, people I could actually play with, a few people and get the gear that I needed to eventually raid. And yeah, Wrath really did a good job with making things accessible. And this is probably like the first expansion where you had, like, if you wanted to level an alt, you could do so and not miss out on a whole lot. The accessibility of just, getting gear, doing dungeons. You didn't have attunement anymore. Um, it was very easy. Like, if I wanted to tank as a DK, I could do so and not take forever to get the gear needed to tank. Um, it definitely there's definitely good things and definitely bad things about accessibility, but for the most part I think uh, I think making the game more accessible and more all friendly is definitely a good decision because it got more people into the game. More people did want to play. More people did want to play Wrath. A lot of people that I know uh, that I played with in WoW, a lot of them started off in Wrath, and they told me that like it was very easy to get to it and like get to the end game content and actually do the end game content, as opposed to like BC and vanilla. So yeah, I can definitely say it made it accessible, but I felt like it made it too accessible. Like there wasn't any sense of like so when I was playing BC, even towards the end of the expansion, like you could still go into the general chat and still have people be like, hey, I want to find I want to I'm looking for a 10-man Kara, or hey, I'm looking for a 25-man Serpent Shrine, or hey, I'm looking for a 25-man Sunwell. Like you had people doing different raids, different types of raids, and me personally, I kind of missed that. I kind of missed being like, hey, what raid do I want to do today, or what raid could I join up in on my own free time when I wasn't raiding with my guild. And now these days you really don't even have that, and Wrath was kind of the start of that because obviously with each subsequent patch, like once Oldor came out, you weren't worried about doing Obsidian Sanctum. You weren't worried about doing Eye of Eternity. There was no point. And also with the badges that you could get, like that gear far outpaced what you could get in the early raids. So there was no point doing the early raids anyway. Um, but I do kind of miss that whole like just going into general chat and seeing like, hey, there's like 3 or 4 different raids that I could do that that I can enjoy doing. I can't tell you how many times that I saw that, like, oh yeah, we need people for Zulaman, or hey, we need people for Serpent Shrine, or hey, we need people for uh, uh, Sunwell, or we need people for Hajal. The list goes on and on. And that's something that I do miss. I miss it immensely. But now it's just oh yeah, we're just doing this one raid and that's it. Like we're not doing anything else. Um, and also, another cool thing that Wrath introduced was the achievements, which now gave people incentive to like push for specific achievements. Like, oh, if I do this specific achievement, like the Bronze Drake one, oh, if I you know do that one dungeon, the Calling of Strathholm, I believe is what it's called. If I do that dungeon within a specific time period, I can get the Bronze Drake. I could be rewarded with it. And I don't know if that was an achievement necessarily, or if that was actually part of the game. I think it was, but the point still remains. Like you could do those achievements and get specific mounts or specific titles. So incentivize people to do different things in the game instead of just chilling and just not doing much of anything once they were done with their content for the week. But I definitely think that a lot of what Wrath provided was ultimately good for the game. Um, but I don't like the fact that they try to introduce vehicle combat. I hated the Oculus. That was fucking terrible. It's like why? Why do I have to board a dragon and go kill this bigger dragon? can't this dragon just land and let me just like use my class abilities to kill him? Why do I have to fly up and shoot him with these abilities that don't feel really good for me as a DPS or as a healer as a tank? And then yeah, with winter grass, yeah, which yeah, I wasn't the hugest fan of, but it was pretty interesting. It was decent. And of course, it was also awesome being able to dual spec. I didn't have to worry about I didn't have to worry about respecking every time. I needed to switch to like Affliction or I wanted to switch to Destro. Like I could just have multiple specs, and because I did try PvP early on in Wrath. I did have a PvP spec and a PvE spec, but ultimately I just stopped PvPing in Wrath. So, but yeah, it was definitely hold on one second. One second. What's that? Oh yeah. One last thing I do want to say about Wrath before I rank it. I do think that they need to bring back hard modes. I think that was a very elegant solution to what was provided. This because Ulduar, like, if you had like a bunch of new people that you wanted to raid with, you could just do the regular normal mode. But if you had a group of people that you were comfortable with like doing hard stuff with, now you guys could do the hard mode stuff. You guys could do the you guys could do the hard again, like I said, the hard mode stuff, and just challenge yourselves like that. I think it was an elegant solution, and you didn't have to do all this heroic mythic stuff that we have today. um, I think they need to bring that back. And honestly, it'd be a cool way to, do a lot of these raids. Like, can you imagine doing a hard mode for, council and mythic raiding? That would be another, challenge in itself. But it would definitely be interesting to see how Blizzard could have pulled that off if they'd implemented it in Shadowlands. Who knows? Maybe they'll bring it back in the future, but I think personally they need to bring back hard mode. But again, as for my ranking, I think I'll rank Wrath A. Again, it's just they made it too like the main reason I don't have it as S tier is just they made it a little too easy, a little too like accessible. If that makes, I shouldn't say accessible. It made it to where it wasn't there wasn't as much of a challenge in terms of getting to where you wanted to get to in the end game content. And again, this may be me sounding like an old dinosaur about this, but I do think that like, oh, if I wanted to do, if I wanted to do Ulduar, I should probably do, the early raids first. I should probably do Eye of Eternity, Obsidian Sanctum. I should probably do those raids first. And then if I wanted to do Child of the Crusader, I should probably do Ulduar, and then so on and so forth. I felt like there should be like a natural progression. But like with the accessibility, I could have taken a break in Wrath, come back near the end, gotten a quick amount of gear, and jump straight into Ice Crown, which again is fine. It's just me personally, I do like the grind, and I'm a little weird when it comes to that, but I do miss that sense of progression. And I felt like with BC, you kind of had that sense of progression. Like the entombments, not everyone likes them, and they were pretty convoluted in BC. But I think Blizzard could have implemented like an easier attunement system in Wrath, and still, still given that sense of progression. Like you're progressing towards a bigger and bigger thing, because not everyone played throughout the entire expansion. So for me, like Wrath is not quite up there with BC and the other expansion that I have there. I have two in the S tier, and you guys could probably guess which one. But Wrath is definitely one of the better expansions. I just would not put it up all the way, all the way up there at the top. I do feel like that's when the sense of community was starting to die down, and the game was starting to get a little easier. Plus, they didn't really add anything unique or innovative, at least in my mind, to where it's like, okay, yeah, I can see why this would be like a god tier raid. Like a lot of it was just the lore itself. People enjoyed the lore more than anything. Okay, so for the next raid, which is gonna be Cataclysm. Yep. And oh boy, yeah, Cata's a tough one, man. I honestly, it's poor timing. Any expansion that came after Wrath of the Lich King was gonna have a tough time exceeding or matching Lich King or even topping it. Uh, and yeah, Kata could not deliver. It's basically like trying to replace Michael Jordan or trying to replace LeBron James. It's hard. You can't do it. Like those types of players are irreplaceable, and Wrath of the Lich King was probably one of the most iconic expansions in terms of lore and in terms of like how well people remember it. So really anything Kata did was going to pale in comparison. And I feel like Kata gets a worse rep than it probably deserves. I wouldn't say it's the worst of the worsts of the expansions, but it definitely had its low points. And from a personal perspective, Kata introduced a system that I vehemently hate. I hate it a lot, and I'll talk about it later. But I hate this particular system. And again, all my friends that know me know what I'm talking about. But I hate this particular system that Kata introduced. But Kata, I feel like it's more a victim of circumstance than just how bad it was in terms of content. Because honestly, a lot of the content that they provided was pretty good. Firelands is really good. Twilight. That I forgot the name of the one with Cho'Gall. That raid was pretty good. Uh, Twilight Descent. No, Blackwing Descent. Sorry, Blackwing Descent. Those, uh, the freaking air raid one. The Alakir raid. I can't think of. I'm really can't think of the names of these raids right now. I don't know why, but a lot of the early raids and then Firelands were amazing raids. Uh, I just don't think that the end raid Dragon Soul was a particularly amazing raid at all, and I think that's probably what soured a lot of people on Kata was just the mehness of the raid. Like it did not do Deathwing justice. And honestly, the choice of villain Deathwing was probably a good idea. It was probably a decent idea, but I think with the difference between Arthas and Deathwing is that with Arthas, we kind of knew where the story was left off at after Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne. Like we knew that Arthas had taken over Ice Crown, and he had worn the mask, he had worn the helm of domination to become the new Lich King, and that he was up there in Northrend. We knew this, but with Deathwing, a lot of us just assumed that he died, like he got shot by the Dragon Soul. At least those of us that read up on the lore. Yeah, and just like we assumed that he was dead, then he just like pops out like a jack in a box, and like, all right, cool, he's the villain. But there was no sense of like, oh my god, I want to know his story, like there was with Arthas' story. Like we all cared about what happened with the Lich King, what were you gonna do with him. None of us really give a crap about what we're gonna do with Deathwing, what happened to him. For every 100 fans of for Arthas, there were probably like maybe two to five fans of Deathwing, which kind of sucks. Cause I did like Deathwing as a character, like his descent into insanity. I just felt like Blizzard kind of just they didn't do him justice, especially in the last raid, because we didn't actually fight Deathwing. We fought his backside and his fingers. We didn't fight him specifically. We just fought his appendages and his back, which okay, I guess, but we never actually fought him, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I mean, there were some things that Cat introduced that like prevent me from straight up giving it an F, like Worgen and Goblins, which I like Worgen, and actually my new main at the time, our Warrior. I created a furry Fury Warrior, if that makes sense. Yeah, I created a Worgen Warrior. And I spec as Fury. which I love Fury. I still love Fury to this day. It's by far my one of my favorite classes next to my current main class. But yeah, no, it was definitely I definitely like the race introductions because I know a lot of people asked for Goblin for the longest, and then Worgen, Worgen looked pretty cool whenever we fight them in that one area, Silver Pine Forest, I think is that the name of it. I can't think of the names of these places, um, but yeah, it was it was definitely those races were pretty cool. Also, Kata introduced reforging, which that's another thing I think Blizzard probably needs to bring back. Reforging helped with getting the stats that you needed for your specific class. Um, and basically how it worked for those who don't know is that if you had like say if you got a gear that had like 100 haste and 100 crit, and your best stat was like mastery or something. You could choose which stat, like your worst stat, which I guess in this case would be haste. And again, I'm just spitballing here, but you could choose the haste stat and then reforge like 30% of it to mastery. So now instead of like 100 haste, 100 crit, now you had 100 crit, 70 haste, and 30 mastery. It wasn't You didn't get all of the stats. However, you did get stats that catered more to you did get some of your best stat that helped to make your character more viable DPS or healing or tanking wise. So I feel like reforging is something that they probably needed to bring back for sure. I would definitely play it, or I would definitely advocate for reforging. Um, for sure. I know some people be like, no, just just get the gear that works best for you. Um, but I just feel like reforge or like there's no best in slot anymore if reforging's a thing. Which yeah, it's fine, but at the same time, what is the harm in trying to reforge your gear to the stat that you need, to the best secondary stat that you need? I feel like that would be something that Blizzard could implement and allow players to customize their characters a bit more to the way they want to. Like it would definitely help my monk, which is my main. It would definitely help my Windwalker monk if I could, reforge everything towards more versatility. You definitely do more damage. Which, yeah, monks. I don't know where they're gonna be, but that's a topic for another day. Um, but yeah, also with Kata, you could pug raids and not have it be and not have it use your lockdown or lockout, I should say. Because before in BC and Wrath, if you did raid and you did, if you were part of a bad, like if you did pug a raid and you were part of a bad run, you just used your lockout for the week and you couldn't raid on that character anymore, basically. But with Kata, Blizzard got rid of that to where if you did raid and you can kill every boss at least once. So like if you killed up to a certain amount, um, if you killed a certain amount of bosses in a specific raid, and then your group just broke down and broke apart, you could pretty much pick off where you left off. Like if you kill like 3 of the first 7 raid bosses, uh, um, I forget in which raid, or if you kill like the first 3 bosses in Blackwing Descent, you could pick up on the 4th boss in another group and still be able to get loot, which is the current template that we use today in WoW. And I feel like that's something that was definitely very helpful in allowing people to just pick up rating whenever they wanted to. But at the same time, I do feel like it kind of killed a sense of communication and togetherness, because now me as a person, I could just go into a group. If it doesn't work out, I can just leave. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to say anything. There's less incentive to communicate and be like, okay, we got to make this work. At least in Wrath and in BC, if you did join a group, you had to make it work. You had to, communicate to the other person or communicate to the group what was going on. If you could or couldn't do something, you had to communicate that to the group, because if you left and if you left and they really needed you, well, now you just screwed over the group, and they wouldn't be able to continue the content. But at least in at least in Kata, you could do that. So that's another thing that Kata added that I feel like a lot of people just tend to overlook because of how bad Kata in general was compared to Wrath. And again, a lot of this with Kata, I feel like is just trying to compare it to Wrath, and it sours people on Kata. But like the actual content itself wasn't bad. Like I said, the raids were pretty good up until Dragon Soul. Uh, and having a dungeon journal for the first time, which yes, again, Kata introduced that, was definitely very helpful, and learning some of the boss mechanics and whatnot. Uh, with Kata, the talent tree, the change, I kind of liked it. I understood why they did it, because again, if you kept because with the level increase, if you kept doing the one level one talent, uh, it would have looked like Path of Exile with like all those crazy amounts of talents that you have in that game. But at least with this is like you can kind of control the amount of points. Although it did lead to like more cookie cutter builds. Like you can only, and this is when people were starting to, you know, figure out, okay, what spec do I have to, or what build in my talent tree do I have to go to maximize my DPS. There was more of an emphasis on that in Kata than there were in the other raids, which is pretty much a precursor to how people raid now and do keys today. Um, but yeah, and also with Kata, there was a lot of those stat changes. I think Kata was like the first expansion where Mastery was introduced, which was a mixed bag. Not everyone liked it. Me personally, I liked it. It was an interesting new stat that they introduced. So a lot of it, they took away a lot of the stuff like mana per 5 seconds, hit rating. Excuse me. Yeah, a lot of the stats they took away, but they did introduce a few things here and there. So it was a mixed bag. Not everyone liked the changes, but me personally, I did. Uh, I felt like it was good for the game. You didn't have to. You weren't forced to stack hit or stack expertise like automatically, because pretty much every class had to stack hit in order to maximize their DPS or whatnot. Because if you didn't have a specific percentage, I think for a lot of classes like 8% or something, if you didn't have like 8% hit, then you're gonna lose out on DPS because your abilities are gonna miss. But Kata got rid of that, so where you can just stack the secondary stats that you wanted to, like crit, haste, mastery, whatever the case may be. I think they also had multi strike as well, which was just, oh, I love multi strike, but they got rid of it. Actually, no, I think multi strike was Draenor. I forget, but yeah. As for the cons though, with Kata, it was just the main reason why I hate Kata to this day is because they brought in Raid Finder. I hate Raid Finder. I can't tell you how much I despise Raid Finder. It is probably one of the worst decisions Blizzard's made. I get why they did it, because I think at the time, Kata, there wasn't cross realm raiding. Like you couldn't join a raid group from other realms. Like it had to be within your own server. So, and again, if you're on a low population server, it was hard for you to find a raid group, especially if if there weren't that many people in your faction, whether you're Alliance or Horde. So I understand why they brought in Raid Finder to kind of alleviate some of that. And it also allowed people that, weren't hardcore into raiding, it allowed them to see the end game content. And they can still get gear. It may not be as powerful as the gear that they would get if they did, normal or heroic, but it was still very powerful. It was still pretty decent gear, and something that I can say, hey, yeah, look, see, I did the content, I got to see the end game content. It's just, for me, I don't think that Raid Finder adequately prepares people for what actual legitimate raiding is like. And I will say legitimate raiding because, yeah, I mean, even though normal is barely normal rating is barely a step up from Raid Finder today, I still at least adequately prepares you for some of the mechanics that you face in modern day raiding. It's just, yeah, Raid Finder, I think they should have got rid of it once cross realm raiding became a thing, because now the main reason why you even needed it in the first place is gone, because now you could, raid with people from all over. You have a huge pool to raid from. You can raid with someone from Zul'jin, from Sargeras, I don't know, from Tychondrius, from Moonguard, even. Like, you could raid with anyone in the world, provided they're in your same faction. So it's like, it's you're not gonna struggle to find people to raid with. But I can also see why Blizzard keeps it in the game, to allow the casual player base to experience the content without having to dedicate an insane time, or to dedicate insane amounts of time to find a raid group and then complete the raid. So I get it, but me personally, I hate Raid Finder, and for me it's just I just pretty much puts Kata down a lot. Not all the way to a net, because like I said, there were good things that Kata brought, but I do think I do think Kata didn't deserve as much flack as people gave it. But introduction Raid Finder, definitely a big no. And also, a lot of people need to understand that during this time, MOBAs were starting to become a thing. You had League of Legends that came out, like, I think the year before. So people were let down by Kata, and they saw League of Legends and how good it was. So a lot of people were starting to play League of Legends. I remember quite a few friends of mine that I played with just switched over to League because they hated Kata so much. And yeah, it kind of soured on me, because now I didn't have as many people to play with on WoW that I did before. But yeah, you also have the rise of those MOBA style games that kind of cut into the subscription of Kata, which, I mean, if you look at Blizzard's subscription rate, I'll probably have the link for that at the end of this video, or when I make this into a video, I'll have the link for that down at the bottom. But it was definitely League of Legends definitely had quite a bit to do with bringing Kata down, along with Kata's own ineptitude and inadequacies. But for me, I would rank Kata at AD. Like I said, Raid Finder just kills it for me. I as good as Firelands was, as good as Blackwing Descent was, as good as those early raids were, I like. Oh, and I also have to say the dungeons were quite a step up. But even then, I wasn't the biggest fan of them. Like, I did them because they did provide adequate gear in order for you to start raiding, but they weren't really fun to do, if that makes sense. Like, there wasn't many that I enjoyed doing. Maybe Vortex Pinnacle was one. Grim Batol, but only because of those dragons. Like, getting up on those dragons and flying down and shooting everyone and killing half the dungeon. That was pretty fun. But for the most part, I wasn't a big fan of the dungeons, even though they were pretty difficult, which was pretty good. I was happy about that Blizzard had learned their lesson. Like, all right, we can't make dungeons too much of a lol fest. Like, it's got to have some level of difficulty. So yeah, for sure, I would rank Kata at D. It did get a lot of flack, but not as much as, like, I can't say Kata is the worst expansion. There's definitely a couple of expansions that come close to it, though. I'll definitely say that. But yeah, for the next one, Miss Pandaria, I know a lot of people, when they heard about this, were like, "Oh my god, we're playing with pandas, man! Are we really doing pandas?" But yeah, no, we Blizzard actually did it. They're actually, yeah, pandas are a real thing. And I know people were like, "Oh yeah, you're probably catering to China," because that's when the news came out that, like, there's gonna be like a Chinese server or whatever. I don't know if Chinese servers were a thing or if they were coming out, but I know Blizzard was making a concerted effort to cater more towards the Eastern markets, and having a game predicated on Asian culture was definitely a good way of doing that. So a lot of people are like, it's Blizzard's attempt to cater to China, which I don't really see that smart business. If you're releasing a game, or if you're opening up Chinese servers and releasing a game with with a lot of East Asian influence. That's smart. That's good. And they're gonna want to play it. But for me personally, when I was playing Miss Pandaria, I felt like it was the better ones. Not like Wrath or BC tier, but it was definitely one of the better ones. I For me, I enjoyed like how good a lot of the classes were. I felt like a lot of the classes got really good abilities that helped every class feel like they were powerful. Um, I do remember a lot of my friends that I talked to. They're like, "Yeah, man, you got a PvP because it's like the best, man. It's like you, pretty much everyone's on steroids. Everyone has like all these insane abilities that allow them to PvP and hold their own." Again, I can never get into PvP like that, but it just goes to show you like how much people enjoyed playing their classes in Miss, which is really what I remember. I remember as like a hunter, as a warlock, as a warrior. Like I remember enjoying playing all three classes. I think I mained my warlock at this time. No, it was my hunter. Sorry, it was my hunter that I mained at this time. But it was my hunter, my warrior, and my lock. Yeah, those are three main characters that I played. But all three classes I thoroughly enjoyed playing with. Um, and yeah, Miss from a class balance perspective, pretty much nailed it. I think that's pretty much as close to complete class balance that Blizzard ever got. And it's probably because they didn't introduce like a shit ton of new systems like they were gonna do in the future. Cough, cough. But yeah, the class balance is really good. The raids are really really good, especially Throne of Thunder, Siege of Orgrimmar. And it's actually in Miss is when I first started doing hardcore raiding. I first started doing heroic raiding, which is like the top level of raiding at the time. I remember doing that for Siege of Orgrimmar. I think I got up to Paragons um, before I stopped, or before the next expansion was coming out. But Paragons was as far as I got in terms of mythic rating. But again, this is my first foray, and again, no, I do remember now. Yeah, so I did play my hunter initially, but I did switch my warrior as my main. Yeah, he was my main class that I played with. But even then, like I would still do heroic raiding with my warlock as well. My warlock, my warrior, and yeah, it was it was an amazing time to raid. I found a good guild to raid with, and I wish I would have played with them even more, but they stopped playing in the next expansion, and honestly, I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. Also, Miss was the expansion that introduced my favorite class, my current favorite class, which is the monk, which is what I currently main as a Windwalker monk. Again, for those of you who know me, I thoroughly enjoy playing the monk. I will never, I don't think I'll go out of my way to play another class other than the monk. Like the monk will probably be my main for a while, no matter how Blizzard tries to reduce its power. I will still like it's fun. I love Windwalker. What can I say? But at the time, like monks didn't get as much love as DKs and demon hunters did for Legion, which is a travesty because I felt like monk could have been they could have put monk on that pedestal that they did those other two classes, and it would have served that entire class much well. Because I remember seeing a stat with like currently I think monks are like the second least played class. I forgot what the worst one is, but monks were definitely the lowest played class, which sucks because they are fun, but it's hard to convince people. Um, but yeah, it introduced the monk, so it gets bonus points for me for that. Uh, the zones themselves are beautiful. Kunlai Summit, Jade Forest, they were all very detailed. I did enjoy going through each zone. Even the Mantid one, the Dread Wastes, like I like the blue hue of it, the blue Shaw infused hue of it. I like that zone a lot. It's one of my favorite zones that I ever played in. Yeah, they also introduced the Brawlers Guild, which was they really need to make that more of a thing again because that was probably the first time where like players could test themselves one on one and see how well they could do, like how high they could go up in the Brawlers Guild ranking. Um, I enjoyed it personally. I think I did get up to the top level, or I think it was like 9 or 10 levels. I forget, but I know I got pretty close. I know, I know I got. Um, I know I did high enough to get a specific weapon. I don't know if this weapon was a T-Mog or if it was like an actual weapon I can use in raiding, but it was a lot of fun. I still remember that one fight. Uh, God, I forgot the name of the boss where you had to like face your character a certain way. If you didn't, he had these lines come at you in a hexagonal shape, and if like the lines like if you faced your body towards those lines are pretty much just gonna one shot you. And I remember how much difficulty that boss gave to a lot of people. But yeah, the Brawlers Guild was pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot. And then they also brought in Timeless Isle, which is pretty cool. I enjoyed Timeless Isle as well. I think Blizzard figured out something where, oh yeah, this is how we could create a new this is a new way of questing, a new way of doing things in a zone. Like it doesn't have to be, oh, you go to a zone, you just get these quests and you do them and that's it. That's all you have to do. Like you can do different things. I think it started developing the concept of world quest. Basically what we see today. Go out in the world, do these quests, get these rewards. But you can go to the location instead of like having to go to an NPC and pick up said quests. You can get treasures. You can do all these things. You could even kill a world boss there. Like Thomas Saul was amazing, and it's probably one of the best features of MOP. But I will definitely say MOP, what brings it down for me is definitely the amount of dailies that you had to do. Like that shit was insane, man. Like we like that expansion more than anything killed my desire to want to do dailies. I hate I shouldn't say I hate dailies, but it's just flying all around Pandaria doing dailies for each of the factions and trying to get exalted was such a damn chore. It's just a bad. Like I just want to raid. I just want to do all these cool things, but I had to sit there and do these damn chores basically before I could even get to raiding. Um, some were pretty cool. I do remember Throwing Thunder. I remember the vault that you could go into, and get to I think you could get to like the end of the vault or whatever, and get a pretty cool get a pretty cool reward. I think for your legendary and for like other stuff as well. But like for a lot of it, just a lot of dailies, man. It was not the greatest. Also with MOP, like I think it was the first time where like you needed specific gear, otherwise you would not be as viable as you would. You would not be as viable without it as you would with it. And of course, I'm talking about the legendary back that you eventually got from Rathian when you completed that legendary quest chain. Yeah, it was such a long, arduous journey to complete that, and and if you did not have that back piece, you were not going to do as much DPS as some of the other people in your raid. Like it was just not going to happen. And again, I'm speaking from a DPS perspective. I'm sure the same applied for healing as well. But DPS wise, like it was pretty much mandatory you have that cloak if you wanted to do high end raiding. And for the first time, that was like, oh, I need to have specific things before I can, like specific items before I can even start, heroic raiding. And when I say heroic, I mean today's version of mythic raiding, because at the time Blizzard didn't have mythic raiding. I think in was it Warlords of Draenor is when they first introduced mythic raiding, at least how it's currently known. So when I say heroic, I mean like the top level of raiding, what we would think of as mythic today. But yeah, it was like you needed that cloak in order to do the best DPS you could in the top level of raiding. But if you didn't have it, you were pretty much on the back foot at all times. But yeah, another thing that knocks down Miss is when they introduced RNG with the Titan forging stuff, because now it was like, oh yeah, there's a chance I could get this gear that's like slightly better than what I currently have. Um, but the thing with Miss is that they didn't make it too much of a thing. Like, yeah, your Titan forging gear might be like 6 or 7 item levels above what you currently have, so it's not like you have to go out of your way to get it. But it did introduce RNG into the game, and that became quite a slippery slope as you know as future expansions came about. Because Blizzard, they really leaned into that RNG train, and it's just, yeah. The dungeons themselves are just probably the worst set of dungeons in any expansion. Honestly, there was nothing really memorable about them. It sucked. Like those dungeons were just straight trash. Uh, I remember uh crap. I can't think of that brewery where you had to go and help the uncle make the perfect brew or whatever. And you had like fight rabbits and shit. Like, nah, I hated it. And then this whole scenarios thing, that was a complete waste of time. All those things pretty much like knock MOP down from being like a really good expansion. And for me, I would put it at a B. Um, like I said, I think just the amount of dailies, the introduction of RG, it was more long term things that they introduced into the game that kind of lower it for me. Um, the fact that you need a specific gear to be viable in high end rating is something that I didn't like. I think if you need to do high end rating, like it should be about your skill. I don't think it should be about whether you have a specific set of gear. Now, granted, with that being said, I don't I'm not saying someone should just show up in like normal level gear and just like I want a mythic raid or I want a heroic raid. It's like, nah, man, you got to have some level of baseline gear, but at the same time I don't think it should be like, oh, you don't have this back piece, I don't know if we can take you for this heroic rating because you don't have the specific back piece, or you don't have the specific piece in general that you need for your class. And again, I understand the raid leaders' decisions when it comes to stuff like that, because the game pretty much forced you to have that specific piece, and if you didn't, then you're gonna fall behind very quickly. So I don't blame them for making sure every one of their raiders had that back piece. But it did long term introduce that type of mentality, that type of thinking. So, but yeah, other than that, like the content of Mist was pretty good. And Blizzard for the most part were nailing it on the content patch, except for Kata. But yeah, it was a good expansion. It's just, I don't know why people give it so much flack. I mean, people hate pandas for some reason, but to me, it was a really good expansion. Just again, like I said, the dailies and then the RNG, and then the mentality about you have to have specific things that kind of knock it down for me a little bit. And then the next expansion, one of the worst damn expansions that I've ever played, which is funny because this is also the expansion that I also went hard in the paint. Which we call it mythic rate or heroic rating, or at least now I can say mythic rating because they did introduce mythic rating in Hellfire Citadel. Again, my main problem with Warlords of Draenor is just the lack of content. And Blizzard themselves were like, yeah, we apologize for this expansion. Like, this expansion was not what we intended, and yeah, we need to. Blizzard pretty much just like gave up on this expansion like 2 raids in, or I guess 3 raids in, because you had High Mall. Oh, and another reason I hate this is because they killed my boy Kargath. Like, he was probably one of the cooler looking warlords in the game, and he's the first person that you kill in High Mall, which it's like you guys couldn't keep him alive for another raid tier or something. Like, you guys had to kill him off immediately. Now, he dropped some of the sickest transmogs in the game. The oh shit, what is it? Hold on, I honestly, I gotta pull this up. Give me a second. Do, 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 do. Sorry, I know I'm going off a tangent, but like I can't think of the name that he the weapon that he dropped. The Blade Fist, that's what it is. Was it the Blade Fist? Yeah, the Blade Fist. By far, by far the coolest. Like look at that. Look at how sick that is. Like probably one of the dopest transmogs ever in the game, and he had to be the first to die. I was like, I already started to hate Draenor because of that decision. And again, personally, that's just me. As I love Kargath as a character, especially in the Lords of War video that they had, which again that was the first time Blizzard did something like that. Uh, the actually honestly that whole video almost made me give Warlords of Draenor a higher grade than it ultimately deserved, but yeah, Kargath was one of the cooler looking ones that I wish he would have gotten his own like patch or something, but Blizzard couldn't even give him that. Um, and yeah, with Draenor, you definitely had some of the best leveling in the game. Like leveling was so fast, you could just blow through. Yeah, you could just blow through. What was it? Yeah, 90 through 100 like that. Especially if you got the Spires of Iraq, where uh, that garrison ability where you could teleport back to your base and get 20% increased XP. Yeah, it was insane. Like the leveling was some of the best, and you actually got improvements to your abilities as you level. Like every 2 levels, you get like an improved, mind flay as a priest or something like that. So like it was like leveling, and then the fact that your player got stronger were probably two of the positives that came out of Draenor. Um, and then it also introduced the stop flight button, which very handy. Probably one of the most handy things Blizzard's ever come up with. The fact that you could just stop your flight and land at the closest one because you forgot something, or if you did forget something the minute you took off, you could just hit that stop flight button and turn back, and get whatever you needed before you flew off again. Um, but yeah, it was definitely. Oh yeah, Blackrock Foundry. One of my favorite raids. I think that one is definitely a top 10 raid for sure. Uh, Black Hand was a favorite fight of mine. I definitely like Aura Gorger trying to trying to dodge that roly poly while killing those crates. Uh, the two twins on the conveyor belt, uh, Hansgar and Franzok. One of my favorite fights. They had a lot of unique fights in Blackrock Foundry. I definitely loved watching, um, or not watching. I definitely loved raiding in Blackrock Foundry. What else? Oh yeah, the train. Oh my god, it was so funny watching people get run over by the train and die. Operator Throgar, that's the one. Yeah, that. Oh man, I mean I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure everyone that's ever ran that particular raid when it was current definitely died to those trains at least once in their lifetime, doing that fight when it was live. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of good memories. But yeah, Blackrock was for sure an all-time great raid. Uh, and it was again very unique, very very unique raid. Points for Blizzard for creativity when it came to that specific raid. Uh, but yeah, and again I think with Draenor's biggest problem is that they did not have nearly enough content. And it was funny because you literally could have had like a patch for each each warlord if you wanted to. You could have had a patch for Kargath. You could have had a patch for Grom Hellscream. You could have had a patch for what's that dude's name? Oh crap, I can't think of. You could have had a patch for Gul'dan and Archimonde. You could have had a patch for that what's that dude's name? I can't think of it. The one with the one eye. The crap, I can't think of it. Hold on. I gotta pull this up again. I keep forgetting. Like literally every warlord themselves could have had their own patch. What is it? Come on, come on. Yeah, Kargath, Blackhand. I mean, yeah, he did have his own patch. Yeah, that's true. Kilrog, yeah, that's the name of the guy. Kilrog, he could have had his own patch. Uh, Ner'zhul, I mean, yes, we killed him off in Shadowmoon, but he's definitely probably one of the more powerful characters, and we killed him off pretty quickly as well. Uh, it's just there's a lot that could have been done with the content. Like I'm not saying I'm some like uh, uh, a game designer or whatever, but I'm sure even I could have come up with content for each warlord. But the fact that Blizzard just didn't even try to bring forth content to everyone, and we had to deal with 300 days of Hellfire Citadel, which wasn't a terrible raid, but yeah, it was 300 days of the same raid, which is just bananas. And also with Hellfire Citadel, the reason why I don't have it ranked as a higher raid is because it's the first, or I shouldn't say it's the first, but it's like really it's the raid known most for forcing people to have to download add-ons just to deal with specific boss fights. Like I remember for Iskar, there was a specific add-on that you had to download to deal with the little ball throwing stuff. You had to download the Exorcist raid tools for the second boss and Hellfire Citadel. Hold on. What was it? Was it Cormorock? Yeah, I think it was Cormorock, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Cormorock was the one where you pretty much needed an add-on to deal with. I don't care about that. Where you pretty much had to deal with all the little marks on the ground that you had to stack on. Um, and then Archimonde himself, who, like, when you were trying to do him, when you're trying to mythic grade Archimonde, probably one of the most difficult bosses of all time. There are plenty of YouTube creators who have made videos regarding how difficult Archimonde was, and like he had a specific mechanic where you had to, where you and another person had a line go between both of you guys, and if anyone was in between, then they would pretty much just get one shot and die. So you had to download this add-on that lets you know, hey, you were partnered up with this specific person and that you guys needed to get out the way. And Mythic, everyone pretty much had this specific had this mechanic to deal with. So you pretty much have like what 10 sets of lines to go through, and you had to make sure that no one got hit with those lines. Otherwise, it was a death. And then his last phase was just pure chaos. At that point, it's just a DPS race to, kill Archimonde before there was like no space left on the ground for you to, go in DPS or do anything, because it was just a lot of fire. That's really what I remember of it. A lot of fire, a lot of just, yeah, it was pretty bad. Um, but yeah, no, but like Hellfire was a pretty good raid. It's just the fact that you needed add-ons to do some of the raid fights was kind of shitty. But I think Blizzard kind of anticipated that with like the proliferation of them, because I think weak ores is also starting to become more and more of a thing. So Blizzard was like, all right, let me just bring in fights that force you to use add-ons. I was like, all right, but I think I think with Draenor, I'm gonna have to put it at an F. It's just the fact that you pretty much Blizzard themselves gave up on this expansion, didn't even try to you know improve upon the expansion. It's just it, yeah, it kills it for me. Oh, and I didn't even talk about garrisons, which yeah were great for like the first month, but then pretty much kill the economy. There's no point selling anything. Everyone's their own damn miner, their own damn herbalist, their own damn enchanter. Professions were pointless. You didn't need them because you could provide everything for yourself. Uh, there was no point in having. There was no point in having a profession. There was no point selling anything because you get whatever you wanted. And it was easy for you to make money through the mission tables. I remember making like a butt ton of money at the time. But oh yeah, Jessica, thank you. Yeah, I am doing it, I guess. Thank you so much. Sorry, I just saw the message now. I'm sorry, but yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you. Um, but yeah, but yeah, back to the conversation. It's just I definitely think that Draenor, if they had provided more content, could have been a little bit better. But the fact that they didn't, and the fact that garrisons were just complete trash. They also introduced time walking, which again, complete trash. I don't even know why we have it in the game still. Just get rid of it, Blizzard. No one cares. Like maybe to gear your alt up initially, but after that, no one really cares about time walking. And I feel like with Draenor, the hype that they brought. Like I still remember the cinematic, the beginning cinematic for Draenor. It was insane. Thank you so much, Olga. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the support that everyone gives me. Thank you so much. Oh, you heard, heard me in the background? Oh my god. Oh, that's terrible. I really gotta fix the audio. I'll probably get some help on that or something, but I gotta fix the audio. I gotta make it a little bit better. For now, I'm just seeing how all this is going, and if I keep getting support, it'll probably incentivize me to put better production into my videos. But again, thank you guys so much for all the support for sure. But where was I? Oh yeah, yeah. They promised a lot. Like I remember the cinematic, like how awesome that cinematic was with Gromash rejecting Gul'dan's offer and him killing Manaroth. That was insane. I love that cinematic. Yeah, it's probably one of the best cinematics I've ever seen from WoW. Uh, but after that, it was all downhill from there. So for me, it gets an F. I can't. I know some people will probably look on it a little bit better than I did, but I think a lot of people would probably agree with me that Draenor was just straight, complete dog shit trash. Like I just, yeah. But on to the next one. And again, thank you guys so much. Thank you for encouraging me. This is definitely very helpful for me for sure. And if you guys have any input on what I can improve on, just please let me know in the chat and the comments. I'm more than willing to hear everyone out and see what I can improve upon. And I know this is just the start, so thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. But yeah, then my next one is Legion, of course, or I shouldn't say my next one, since this is Blizzard's doing. But Legion, I'm not even gonna like try and waste too much. I'm not gonna try and spend too much time on Legion, but S tier, I think it brought a lot of good things, but I will also say that it brought a lot of long-term bad things that we're still dealing with to this day through no fault of its own of the expansion itself. It's just Blizzard just trying to recreate the magic of Legion over and over again with BFA and Shadowlands. But Legion on its own, amazing content. Illidan, bringing back Illidan was a masterstroke. Just I still remember those cinematics. I still remember him killing that damn chandelier, Zera, which Legion was amazing. Like by far my probably one of my favorite expansions. Like BC will always be the best for me. I love BC because that's when I first got into WoW. But Legion is right there. If I had to put BC 1, I'd put Legion right underneath. Like, and it'd be like 1A. It was that good. Like the content was amazing. The raids were amazing. The dungeons. They also introduced Mythic Plus, which is my new favorite thing now. Like honestly, I'm not gonna lie. Everyone that knows me knows that I love doing Mythic Pluses. Like probably my favorite thing to do. And I know a lot of people are confused as to how I can enjoy myself when I do like 15s or higher. I'm like, I like it. I like keys. What can I say? And Legion was the first expansion to introduce Mythic Plus, which was again another masterstroke because they pretty much revitalized doing instances. Like now, people actually want to do instances instead of just strictly raiding, and it gave people another, end game content to do. So that was also a masterstroke by Blizzard in that regard. Uh, Artifacts are amazing. Literally all the artifacts except for I think Beast Mastery Hunter because they had a terrible artifact. Literally every artifact made me want to play every class. Yeah, Maw of Souls was amazing. It was also very quick. I think there are like people doing it in like 10 minutes, and that was like I'm pretty sure like when they were doing Mythic Plus competitions, I'm pretty sure they're probably doing it in like 5 or 6 minutes or some crazy number like that. But yeah, Maw of Souls was a really good dungeon. I'm trying to think. There was that one dungeon in Skyhold that I did, which I liked, but not a whole people did, and I get why. But I like the whole getting onto that platform and going like 300 miles per hour up to Odin, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it was yeah, Legion. I think Legion from a content perspective had it all. Again, I mained a warrior, and the swords of the Valajar probably one of the dopest artifacts that you could probably have. Even but it wasn't even the best one. I think the coolest looking one was probably Apocalypse that Unholy DKs had. That was amazing. Like I felt bad not maining a DK because of how amazing Apocalypse looked. But like literally all the artifacts made me want to play all the classes. And a lot of my friends that I talk to when it comes to Legion, they all say like the classes that they played were probably the best that they had ever been during Legion. Um, I know a lot of people like I said, I currently play Windwalker Monk. They keep telling me that in Legion, Windwalker was so much better than what it is now. And I did play Monk a little bit in Legion, but I never got to experience it because at that time Legion, BFA was about to become live, and people were pretty much gassed out from Antorus, which understandable. That happens with every raid. Of course, the raids themselves were amazing. Emerald Nightmare, not so much. I didn't really like that raid too much, but Nighthold was really good. Although I never fucking got Convergence of Fates. And F you, Blizz, I still hate you for that. Why I never got Convergence? I put in the work, I put in the effort, but you guys never gave me that damn trinket. And my one of my good buddies, Trevor, who I still play with to this day, he didn't even main Warrior. He just hopped on his Warrior one day, and we did Nighthold. Um, no, I think he did Nighthold on his own, and he ended up getting the damn trinket. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, Blizzard. Like, someone that doesn't even play Warrior. It's just... I digress. I digress. But no, it was definitely Nighthold was an amazing raid. Tumor Sargeras is even better. I still remember Kill Jaden being an amazing fight. Even on heroic, it was still pretty difficult. Trying to think what was the fight before. Oh yeah, Fallen Avatar. A lot of PTSD from that fight. Just, oh my god, just him smashing the platform, making it smaller and smaller, and then being yeeted off. I Yeah, Fallen Avatar was definitely one of the more stressful raid fights I've ever been a part of. But it was fun, and with Legion, I could definitely say that about a lot of the raids. And then of course you had Antorus. Loved Antorus, top 5 raid for me. Probably the most social interaction I had in terms of raiding, in terms of just wanting to raid. Uh, like I had a lot of fun with my friends, and like a lot of the friends that I made during Antorus, I still have to this day. Uh, it was amazing. Like I think Blizzard really knocked it out the park raid wise in Legion. Um, and again, with the dungeons being interesting, and then you had Mythic Plus. That again, there was another thing that you could do. Uh, just god tier amazing. And again, with Legion, the underrated aspect that we don't get to have now is that the content that they released was very consistent. You had consistent content. They even had it on a schedule, 77 days. Divided that by 7. Every 11 weeks, you had new content, which in the grand scheme of things, really helps the game because everything remains fresh. Like you're not waiting 8-9 months. Shadowlands, we're not waiting 8-9 months for the next content to be delivered. Like we're having consistent new content, and the content that is delivered is better and better and better. And it's just like I don't know why this can't be done for every expansion, but yeah, like leveling itself was fast. It didn't take me forever to get through Legion itself. And it was the last expansion to have tier sets. Blizzard, bring back tier sets. I know you guys are doing it in Shadowlands. Do not mess it up, please. Tier sets, amazing. Do not mess it up, please. That's all I have to say. And please use some creativity in making the armor, because the armor designs the past two expansions have been just god awful. Not all of them, but a majority of those armor sets they have not done justice to the uh, to the classes or to the aesthetic that you're trying to pull off. Um, and yeah, the story itself was probably the greatest that's ever been since Wrath of the Lich King, because you actually had a coherent story. We knew that we had to deal with the Burning Legion, and we knew how to go about dealing with them. And of course, bringing back Illy Daddy, baby, just bringing him back in the grand scheme of things, and him being an arrogant prick. It was amazing. I missed Illidan so much. It was definitely a good time, and having those cinematics where he's basically just trolling Velen and just talking all this mad shit to him. I'm like, damn, dude, why you gotta be such a prick? But it was how we remembered him. Like the Blizzard did his character justice. They did not try to make him to be something that he actually wasn't. They kept his character consistent as to what we remembered him during Black Temple and BC. But yeah, and the class order halls, amazing. Every class had their own unique class order hall, which was amazing. Even the rogue one, which was a literal sewer, was still pretty amazing because it did bring that rogue aesthetic. And oh yeah, Mage Towers. How could I forget about Mage Towers? I know a lot of you guys, at least did Mage Towers once to get the artifact or to get the artifact appearance. And there was no real good reason for doing them, just to get that dope artifact appearance. And I can tell you, when I was doing it on my Fury Warrior, it was brutal AF. In fact, the story of me actually getting completing Mage Tower on my Warrior, is that I killed the boss. Or no, the boss had killed me, but I still had a dot on her. I think it was from my artifact ability, the uh, Odin's Fury ability. And like a couple of seconds after I had died, she fell to the floor in death, and I was able to get the hidden artifact, or I was able to get my artifact appearance for completing that. So like I got extremely lucky, because I probably did like 50, 60 attempts up to that point, trying to get that artifact appearance, and I finally did it, and I wasn't even alive to finish off the boss. I was dead, and she dies like 2 seconds later, which, yeah, that's very much the story of my life, right? But yeah, Mage Towers were amazing. I know some classes had it harder than others. Like I know Warlocks had it easy. I wish I would have done it on my Warlock, especially if they had that one legendary that pretty much perma slowed everyone, because you had permanent corruption on all the ads, and then you know uh, that specific legendary slowed people who had corruption on them. So, having that specific legendary along with having the permanent corruption, you can pretty much slow the ads before they got to you and killed you. So I know that specific fight was like easy for warlocks, but I know other classes kind of had it tougher. Uh, but yeah, it was amazing. Oh yeah, and you also with the T Mog, you also had a collection log, so you didn't have to like hold every piece of gear. Like once you got it, you got it. You could sell it. Like it was still in your collection log. Um, but yeah, like and a lot of the artifact power or a lot of the artifact weapons had insane powers. Like I remember for warrior, they had Juggernaut, which pretty much increased the damage of execute by like 2 or 3%, and it stacked up 99 times. And I think it was like it increased the power of execute for like 2 3% for like 30 seconds, and it stacked up to 99 times. So pretty much Fury Warriors could just jump to the straight to the top if they were in a fight that had a long ass execute phase. Yeah, you would just see Fury Warriors just like bouncing up to the top. The more they got to execute, it was insane. But like my personal favorite was when I was on my Warlock. They had this ability called what was it called? Soul Flame. So pretty much whenever one ad died, it did it did AoE damage to all the other ads, and you could pretty much do like an insane chain where like one ad died, did AoE DPS, and because of AoE DPS, one or two more ads died, and then they did their AoE DPS. The AoE DPS that you could do as an affliction lock was bananas, and I remember one of my favorite fights was uh the coven the Shivara coven or whatever. God, I forgot the name. I think it's Coven of Shivara or whatever. Or hold on, 1 second. And Taurus raid bosses. Sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, Varimathras, the Coven of Shivara. Yeah, the four ladies that she had to fight. Yeah, one of my favorite fights, at least for my warlock. I hated it on my warrior because of all the bouncing around you had to do to deal with the raid mechanics. But the fact that you could just multi-dot everything and just shred on the meters as a affliction lock was probably the main reason why I like that fight so much. But it was amazing memories. And Taurus I have nothing but good memories for. But with that being said, there were some negative aspects of Legion. I think Legion was probably the expansion where Blizzard leaned pretty hard into the RNG train, and because of how successful Legion was, I think Blizzard really leaned into the RNG train for BFA as well. But the other issue that Legion brought into WoW was it pretty much opened a Pandora's box of introducing temporary power systems because of how successful artifact powers were, or how artifact weapons were, and the powers that they gave you. um but it was just temporary. We were never going to have that permanently. It was only going to be for Legion, and then we were going to lose it when BFA came. But the problem with that is that when you go start from here and then you go all the way here. Oh, sorry. Let me do it here. If you start from here, the artifact powers bring you all the way up here, and then when BFA comes, you drop all the way here, and then you have to build yourself back up with their systems that they had then, and I'll talk about those temporary systems in BFA later. It's just you felt neutered, and again I'll elaborate more on that when I get to BFA. But basically, it's just because of the success Legion had in introducing that temporary power boost with the artifact weapons. Now it's pretty much been a thing for every expansion onwards. BFA, of course, I'll talk about BFA, in detail, and then you with Shadowlands with the covenants. Like you keep having these temporary power systems, so like your character becomes powerful only for that expansion, but it doesn't really gain any permanent power. You don't feel like your character is progressively getting more and more powerful on his or her own. At least when you went from vanilla to BC, your character gained permanent powers or permanent increases in ability. Like you got different specs of ability, different abilities that made you more powerful. Same thing with BC to Wrath. Even from uh, Wrath to Kata, and then Kata to MLP. Like you felt like you were progressing. You were progressing through. Like you were getting more and more powerful. But then with Legion, you pretty much reached the peak of those powers. You reached the absolute peak with how good artifact weapons were. I think Blizzard probably hit the high point in terms of how good each class could be in Legion. Um, but from there, it was all downhill. It's just they didn't make an effort to bring like what they should have done, and I feel like this would have put BFA in a better foot. A lot, if most, if not all, of those abilities that we got from our artifact weapons should have been baked into our baseline abilities. Like that, it should have become a part of our, our package. Like Soul Flame as an affliction lock, that should have been a permanent thing for affliction warlocks. Juggernaut as a fairy warrior, that should have been a permanent thing. It probably would have served BFA very well if most, if not all, of the powers that we got in Legion were baked into our natural class abilities instead of through a temporary system. Because at least this way, instead of going from here to then now here, now you could go from here, plateau, and then go up. You're actually building off of each class instead of trying to rebuild Legion. So I think with Legion it kind of opened that Pandora's box of introducing temporary power systems because of how successful Legion ultimately was. Navigating Argus was terrible. I hate it. I hated it at the time. Um, but like another thing that I didn't like about Legion is that your potential as a DPS or as a healer was limited by what legendary you got, and the legendaries that you got were completely random. Again, it goes back to the RNG train that Legion was on. So if you didn't get your best in slot legendary until like the end, you're not going to do as well as someone who was just questing and all of a sudden got their best in slot legendary just from killing a random ad. And it's hard to compete with that person because they have their best in slot and you don't, and you have to rely on sheer luck to get that legendary, and it's nothing that either of you did, it's just sheer luck. And it's just I don't think that's conducive. Like RNG in general is not conducive to good gameplay because it's relying on luck. You're relying on the WoW gods, I guess you could say, to grant you good gear instead of your own skills, which really should be the basis on you getting the best gear. If you have the best skills, you get the best gear. I do feel like personally that should be a thing, but again, I understand Blizzard's obsession with RNG, even though I don't agree with it personally. Also, Legion introduced personal loot, which I hate because like there are plenty of times where I have gear that I don't need and I want to trade to somebody who could need it, a friend of mine or another person, but I can't because it's soulbound, because the item level is like 5 levels higher than the item that I currently have equipped, even though the item I currently have equipped is like a cajillion times better than the item I just got. And the fact that I can't even trade with anyone, that I'm forced to keep this piece of gear that I don't want or don't need, is just I'm not gonna say they should bring back Master Loot, but there was something to be said about allowing a control for one person to distribute the loot to everyone, so at least everyone got the loot that they wanted. Or regardless of not whether it was fair, that's another story, but at least everyone would get the gear that they wanted, and they could trade their gear, or that the person that was in control of distributing the gear could get it to the right person. So I Legion has some cons for sure, and a lot of those cons were pretty far reaching, but I don't think it was, I think it was more so because of the success of Legion as opposed to just Blizzard being stubborn about adding that specific content, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, it was like Legion was good. Like there was a bit of a grind, especially in terms of getting artifact power for your weapons. But it wasn't like something that was hardcore push. Like you could do it on your own time. And you have plenty of things that you could do to help you get that artifact power to empower your weapons. But but yeah, the DPS and healing numbers became ridiculously insane. I still remember to this day. Again, my boy Trevor. Like I still remember him yelling out, "Oh man, I got I got 50 million health, man. I got 50 million health on the last boss fight, Argus. Because I think like tanks got this. I forget what it was, but they got this specific ability or whatever that like made them huge and gave them like insane amounts of health. And then like specific fights in Antorus that allowed people to pad their meters and stuff, and it's just yeah, it was the numbers became insane. Like I think probably the highest that they've ever been, and I think with Blizzard they're like, okay, yeah, I think we've reached our peak. Like what, like the numbers, the numbers were starting to not make sense. Like it was starting to become more and more cartoonish. And I think Blizzard was like, okay, yeah, we've hit the high point, which is why we had the squish. But yeah, I Legion S tier. I don't know. I said I was not going to take as much time explaining Legion, but obviously with Legion being so good, I had to provide some rationale as to why. But yeah, Legion S tier, just amazing. And now on to the last one. And thank you guys for staying with me. Whoever's been watching this, thank you so much. So this is the last one, I promise. I'm not going to go into Shadowlands again, like I said earlier. It's just it's not complete yet. So until Shadowlands is completed, I can't really talk about it. But the last one I will talk about is BFA. And with BFA, there were a lot of cons to it. I know this, but I'm not gonna grade BFA as harshly as I would. Mainly the reason why is because BFA is really when I first started falling in love with Mythic Pluses. I didn't really do Mythic Pluses as much as Legion. I probably did like 115 in Legion just to see if I could do it. But BFA is really when I started seeing, because I realized with Mythic Pluses, it'd be a way for me to see how good I was on my own, uh, in terms of personal responsibility, DPSing, all of that stuff. It was a chance for me to see how skilled I was on my own, instead of like in a raid concept. Because in raiding, you don't like, yeah, you can see the meters and stuff, and like you don't like, it's more of a team effort, which I don't mind. Of course, I enjoy being in a part of a team, but it's like you don't really know how good you are could be unless you do Mythic Pluses. Uh, but even then, I think with Mythic Pluses, I think it was more so because Raider IO was a thing where you can actually have a specific score, and see how you stacked up against other people in your class. I think more so is because of that, not because of anything Blizzard did. Because honestly, if Raider IO didn't exist, people would just do 15s and not try and push any higher because there'd be no point. But at least now with Raider IO, you see all these. Like I think by the end of BFA, there were people pushing 30s or coming close to pushing 30s. And that's really good because there should be a sense of like, how far can I go? How far can I push this? Like how good am I really? And I think ultimately when you're playing a game, like there is that sense of competition, and of course, having fun. Don't get me wrong. Playing a game should be about having fun. For me personally, me having fun is more about doing a lot of that competitive stuff, like high end keys or whatnot, or mythic rating. For me, that's fun, and I enjoy doing that. And with BFA, like a lot of the dungeons were really good. Waycrest Manor is one of my favorite dungeons of all time. I just love the aesthetic, going through a haunted house, and yeah, it was I loved it. Atal Dazar, it was hit or miss. Tol de Gore, I don't know, I'm listing all the ones, but Tol de Gore, even though it had a lot of bugs, I did like that dungeon because it was insanely stressful, and I don't know. I have a thing for stressful dungeons. Even King's Rest. King's Rest I liked a lot. It was tough for sure, but it was definitely a lot of fun doing because you knew if you did complete, a high King's Rest that, you were pretty good. Um, yeah, all the dungeons, had their even Shrine, which is the dungeon I probably hated the most. But even then, only because of that second boss with the tornadoes and like the debuff on you, and then if you get hit by the tornadoes, you're pretty much dead. Yeah, it was. And I even have videos doing like 19s and 20s. So if you guys want to check that out on my channel, you can. But it was, yeah, and you can see how stressful it could be, uh, doing those level of keys. But I really did enjoy doing them, and that's really the main reason why I'm not gonna grade BFA as harshly as other people would, because if it wasn't for the keys, and if it wasn't for some of the raids like Battle of the Zara Lore, which is again another favorite raid of mine, um, and this is also the time where like a lot of good things were happening for me personally. Uh, I even met someone special in Battle of the Zara Lore during this time, so that was that was good. But I'll talk about that at a later time. But yeah, a lot of good things happened for me in BFA, which is probably why I won't rank it as harshly as a lot of other people, because yeah, there are a lot of cons when it comes to BFA for sure. Uh, the temporary power systems, instead of just having one like we had in Legion, no, Blizzard decided it was a good idea to have three, because yeah, let's go from the highs of artifact powers and then let's completely neuter us by taking away a lot of the abilities on the artifact weapons, which made our classes very fleshed out and very complete. And now we're pretty much just neutered as hell when we start BFA. We essentially went from killing Argus and doing insane amounts of DPS to going into Drustvar and having a difficulty with like a pack of ads with like a group of witches and stuff. It's like, oh no, this witch is beating me to death, and it's just like it felt very neutered. Like you felt like you lost a lot of power. Like it didn't really feel like you were building off of Legion. You felt like you were starting all over again. And I think that was Blizzard's biggest problem, that they were trying to replicate Legion instead of building off of it. If they had just built off of Legion instead of trying to replicate it again, I think they would have been much more successful and people would have been much happier about BFA. But because of Azerite power being such a crap idea, because the premise was you level up your Heart of Azeroth, and then when you get specific gear for your head, chest, or shoulders, you have Azerite powers on them, and then you could click on whatever Azerite power you want, and then boom, you're good. But if you got that same piece of gear but it was a higher item level, the problem was it took a higher Heart of Azeroth power to get those same abilities that you had on your current piece of gear. So you had to level up your Heart of Azeroth before you can even click on the abilities that made your class good, which was really dumb. And then in order to fix that, Blizzard brought in essences, which wasn't the worst idea, but the problem with essences is that Blizzard forced, like, I know for me as a Windwalker, I was forced to PvP in order to get the best essence for myself DPS wise. I was forced to get like 30,000 honor. And mind you, that was on a low scale, because before it was like 50,000 honor. I had to get 30,000 honor before I could get my rank 1 Blood of the Enemy, which is the best essence at the time for Windwalker monks. So I had to do PvP, something I did not like doing, in order to get the best essence for myself. Because if I didn't have this essence, I'd fall behind DPS wise. And Windwalker monks at the time were already pretty bad in terms of DPS and BFA. We were not anywhere near the top. I think we were like, if not the bottom, pretty close to it. So like we needed every advantage we could get. And even then, classes were still struggling. You still had fire mages being at the top. Uh, and then Blizzard, they're like, okay, essences, they're good, but we could still, we still need to, balance this out. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna introduce corruption, which pretty much broke the game. It did help in some aspects, like my monk became more powerful, but I pretty much had to stack 40% versatility in order for my monk to do the same amount of damage as like a demon hunter, who, yeah, who pretty much stacked this really cool ability called Twilight Devastation, which would drop like a bolt of, it's pretty much like a tornado of darkness on ads, which did an insane amount of AOE DPS. But yeah, it was just, it broke the game, and Blizzard just didn't even try to balance classes anymore because of all the systems they had introduced. It just made everything such a, like, classes pretty much where the classes were at the end of BFA is what they were going to be, till Shadowlands came out. Like, Blizzard was not going to make any effort to balance those classes, which is a complete travesty because a lot of classes did need tuning. I know for a fact monks needed an insane amount of tuning just to be competitive, and no, we couldn't get that tuning. Blizzard just said screw it. Like, the only way monks were even viable was, stacking versatility to like insane levels. And even then, people would still take like other classes like demon hunters, rogues, mages, and rightfully so, because those classes didn't need, they could stack things that were, a lot cooler. Like, I'd prefer to stack Twilight Devastation over, something like versatility percentage increases. Um, but yeah, it was terrible. Class balance was not a thing. Blizzard didn't even try, like I mentioned before. Island expeditions were a bad idea. War fronts, like, you could literally AFK from a war front, come back and still win. As long as like one or two people did anything in war fronts, it was impossible to lose. You would never lose a war front, and it's just, it was. I think you had to do it in order to like get gear or something. But war fronts were just a trash idea, and yeah, it sucked. Like, I don't even know why Blizzard brought war fronts into the game. It was a terrible idea. Not as bad as Raid Finder. Actually, no, I'll take that back. It was even worse than Raid Finder. At least Raid Finder, I can understand the rationale as to why. Like, people can still utilize Raid Finder, but war fronts, nah, it was bad. And then honestly, like, the storytelling itself is probably the most disjointed from any expansion. You literally went from a faction war to going under the sea and dealing with Ajara to now going to Nyalotha and dealing with an old god. Oh, and before the faction fight, you had to deal with another old god in Gahoon. So you had to deal with one old god, then kind of the faction conflict. Then you went under the sea to deal with Ajara. Then you went to another realm to deal with Nazoth, which made no sense whatsoever. Like, literally, Ajara herself could have been her own expansion. You could have had that story, Blizzard. Literally, Nazoth himself could have been his own expansion. You could have built off of the Horde Alliance conflict, which is what you tried to do initially in the first place anyway. But you didn't even try after Battle of Dazara lore. Like, Battle of Dazara lore, I feel like set you up perfectly to deal with that Horde Alliance conflict, and you definitely could have brought it back. But you decided to just go off the deep end and, for whatever reason, bring Ashara, back into relevance for God knows what reason. And then same with Nazoth, where those two could have literally been their own expansions themselves. And it's just the storytelling is just all over the place. The cinematics are some of the best in the game. The CGI for those cuts, not for those cutscenes, but for those videos that Blizzard did was amazing. Some of the best I've seen. But the storytelling, the stories that they told were not so much, and it was just very, very disjointed. And I think another thing I don't like about BFA is that this pretty much is where the proliferation of meta classes became more and more of a thing. Granted, don't get me wrong, every expansion you had, you had that meta spec, you had that meta class, you had them, but it wasn't as pushed as much as it was in BFA. It essentially became, when you try to do keys, it really became more about the class makeup uh, of the key as opposed to your actual individual skill, and that's something I had the most problem with. Like in a typical BFA key, you'd want to have a I think it was warrior tank. You'd want to have a druid healer, and then for your DPS, always a fire mage, always a demon hunter, um, and probably a hunter. Hell, you could even bring two fire mages if you wanted to, but it was pretty much more or less people wanted the meta comp for each key instead of looking at each player's now. And I granted, in pug groups, it's very hard to see how good or bad someone really is. And that's why at least with Raider IO, you have some indication of a player being good. There have been times where like my Raider IO at the time was pretty high. I think I cracked 3K if I'm not mistaken, IO score wise, and I was still being rejected for like lower keys, even though like I had completed all the 20s on time for each of the dungeons. Uh, I would still be rejected for like 16s and 17s, and they would take like rogues or hunters or whatever that were like 500 IO or 600 IOs, 600 IO score below me, and yeah, it's just because rogues and hunters or demon hunters like were better fits. Mages were better fits, and it's just you had that like people wanted the meta spec instead of going for people that were actually good and skilled at the game. And I think with BFA really enhanced that attitude. Uh, and I'm sure there's plenty of stories of people being like it's very difficult to get into keys even now because people want that meta spec. To this day, it's just yeah, and because of all the power, all the temporary power systems that BFA introduced, it was a very alt unfriendly expansion. Like yeah, you could get your alt to 120 pretty quickly. The problem was you had to level up your Heart of Azeroth. You had to work to get your specific essence. Luckily, Blizzard did fix that, but they fixed that at the end of the expansion instead of at the begin when they introduced essences in the first place. They should have made essences like account wide from the beginning instead of waiting a patch to do it. And then what was I saying? And then yeah, stacking corruption. Whether it was a specific stat that you needed, like monks for versatility, or a specific ability like gushing wounds for warriors. I know arms warriors needed gushing wounds. Oh no, it wasn't. Sorry, no, it wasn't gushing wounds. I think it was tanks would get gushing wounds if I'm not mistaken. Arms would stack haste to the ceiling. Yeah, hunters would stack crit. At least beast mastery hunters would. So like it's like you had to go through all of that process as an alt, and it could take a very long time to do so. It was not alt friendly. At the end, it kind of was because everything was like essences were already account bound. So once you got the specific essence that you needed that could be applied to other classes, great. Now they could use it without having to go through the grind. But it was still an insane grind during those early days. And then one of the last things I hated about BFA was the plot armor that Sylvanas had. It's like, why did she have such insane power? Like, and we come to find out that she's pretty much borrowing power from a god, essentially, which is why she's so confident in her, abilities. Why she could just face Sourfang one on one and just eat him out of existence. Which just blows my mind, because if everything was equal, Sourfang would beat the brakes off of her. But Sylvanas plot armor, she can never die. Hell, even in Shadowlands with the current patch 9.1, Tyrande, was pretty much choking her to death. And Blizzard's like, you know what? Let's make sure Elune does not give Toronto the power to kill Sylvanas. Brilliant. So, there's that plot armor that just. I used to be a big Sylvanas fan, but they've been pushing her down our throats the same way they pushed Thrall down our throats for what was it, for a Cataclysm. Yeah, it was that bad. But yeah, ultimately, with BFA, like, even though I love doing mythics, um, everything was working out for me personally, and like Battle of the Zarlor was being a good raid. It was a very good raid. I do. Oh, and another thing that I remember about BFA is that the first time watching the World First race, the race between Method and Limit, which was pretty cool because before we didn't really get to see the inside, the how they would prepare, how they would go about doing these runs, but now we get to see that for every patch, every subsequent patch, and that started with BFA, and that's pretty cool. But again, that wasn't even a thing that Blizzard did. That was more so just two top notch guilds, just you know showing what they were doing, and that generated more popularity than anything Blizzard actually did for BFA. Um, but yeah, the raids themselves, like after Battle of the Zarlor, Eternal Palace, okay. Trying to think, Nyalotha, okay. However, the biggest issue with Nyalotha was the end cinematic, which was just I'm not even gonna talk about, but it was really bad. Um, but yeah, BFA, I would rank it a C, and I know people would probably want to just throw it in the F and burn it and just leave it at F, but I think from a personal perspective, just having so much fun doing keys and just being able to meet a lot of interesting people, having a lot of interesting friends. Hey, what's up, Hess? I see you, man. like Hesilar, I've played with him before, and I hope he comes back to the game, for sure. But yeah, no, I've met up with a lot of interesting people in BFA. I enjoyed doing keys probably more so than I've enjoyed doing anything else, and I still rated, still did mythic rating here and there, but I think with BFA a lot of their cons would push it into F territory if it wasn't for me just enjoying those mythic pluses so much. So I'll put it at a C. I still think it's better than Cataclysm. The only reason I didn't put Cataclysm at F is because I think Cataclysm was really more a victim of circumstance, having to come after Wrath than anything that they did content wise. Um, but yeah, that's more or less my rankings. Like I said, I'm not gonna rank Vanilla. Obviously, I didn't play it, so I'm not gonna rank it at all. And with Shadowlands, it's still kind of incomplete. Although right now, I don't know if Blizzard have really learned the lessons from BFA. They're not introducing as many temporary power systems, even though the whole Shards of Domination kind of feels like that. It feels like, oh, you have to get it, which is just cool. Now we have to recraft our legendaries if the shards, if our legendaries was in a shit, what's the word I'm looking for, in an armor slot that provided the socket for the Shard of Domination. So I know for my monk, I have to recreate my best legendary into a back piece instead of a headpiece, because every headpiece that I get from the raid will have the Shard of Domination socket, which again, Blizzard needs to stop putting these temporary power systems. What I could recommend that they do, hell, they could bring back the talent trees, or at least add more talent brackets instead of like the current amount that we have right now. I feel like if they do that, like right now we're at what level 60, right? I definitely feel like once you get to level 70 for the next expansion, uh, it's level 60. Sorry, sorry. I feel like for the next expansion, you can have those talent brackets like every 7 levels, every 8 levels, instead of like every so levels that we have right now. Sorry, my voice is kind of starting to die down. I've been talking for like 2 hours straight. but uh, but yeah, ultimately, I feel like reforging they could bring that back. That way people can reforge their stats as to what they need. Bring some level of attuning back. Uh, I'm trying to think. What else? What else could they bring back? Yeah, bring back hard mode. Hard mode and raise was an elegant solution because you could determine how difficult you wanted the raid to be instead of having to come out and be like, oh yeah, let's do mythic, and like you can determine in the raid or within the raid itself if you wanted to do the hard mode for it, if you just wanted to do regular mode. But I think there's more that I do want to talk, or that I would want to see added into the game to make the game better. But if I went down that train, that'd be like another, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Another 2 hours or so. So I'm gonna just end it here, guys. Thank you so much for everyone that was watching this. Thank you for the support. I will have this video posted for those who didn't watch, and yeah, like I said, if there's anything that you guys could add that I could do better in terms of streaming, just let me know, and I'm all ears. And I'll definitely try to do a better job next time as well. But next Friday I will release another video. It'll probably be a reaction to something. I kind of have an idea of what it is I'm gonna react to, but 5 hours? No, man, I'm not gonna do 5 hours. Come on. Come on, Totes. You already know, man. I'm not gonna do 5 hours. But I only did that because I had to talk about 42 people instead of 7 things like I did this time around. But yeah, I already have an idea of what the next video is gonna be. It'll be a little different from what I've been talking about in terms of like history and WoW. But again, thank you guys so much. I will definitely keep everyone posted as to what it'll be. And thank you all for the support. And I will catch you guys later. Take care.